He followed her that night, and what he saw broke his soul. In the silence after the storm, Amadi stood frozen outside the bathroom door. Through the crack, he saw her, his wife, Nala, kneeling in the tub. But something was changing. Her legs shimmered, then vanished, replaced by a tail covered in iridescent blue scales that pulsed like the tide. The shell necklace she always wore began to glow, as if alive, responding to a call only she could hear. She wasn't from this world. She was from the sea. And now, the sea had come to take her back. He thought he had found love, but what he found was a secret older than the waves. This is a story about forbidden love, ancient powers, and a choice no heart should have to make. If you believe true love crosses all boundaries, comment, "Love is stronger than fate." The morning fog had barely begun to lift when Amadi first saw her. He was pulling in his empty net for the third time that week, salt sticking to his skin like guilt, when he noticed something at the far end of the beach, a figure lying still where the ocean kissed the shore. At first, he thought it was driftwood or some tragic sign of a drowned traveler, but as he got closer, his breath caught in his chest. She was a woman, naked. Her skin shimmered faintly under the early sun, wet with sea foam. Long, tangled hair clung to her shoulders like seaweed, and her eyes, when they fluttered open, held the entire ocean in them. "Are you hurt?" Amadi asked, dropping his net and kneeling beside her. His voice trembled, not from fear, but something else, something ancient and aching. The woman blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream. "Where am I?" "This is in Kosi Bay. You're safe now." She tried to sit up, but her body trembled. Without hesitation, Amadi lifted his coat and draped it over her. She flinched at first, then relaxed, watching him with wary, glassy eyes. "Do you remember your name?" he asked gently. "Nala," she said after a pause, voice soft like waves against stone. "I think, yes, Nala," the villagers whispered as Amadi carried her through the narrow streets of the fishing village. "Who is she? Another burden? She must be cursed." But Amadi kept his gaze ahead. There was something about her, not just her beauty, but the silence she carried, heavy and calm, like the sea before a storm. He gave her a room in his small home, fed her what little he had, and asked for nothing in return. Days passed, then weeks. Nala never spoke of where she came from, nor how she ended up on the shore. She avoided mirrors and never stayed too long under the sun. But each morning, she'd stand by the window, eyes locked on the horizon. One night, as they sat by the fire, the warmth of roasted cassava between them, she finally broke the silence. "Why did you help me, Amadi?" He looked at her, surprised. Her voice was deeper now, steadier, but still carried a current beneath it, something always moving. "You were alone, lost. I know what that feels like." She held his gaze. Not everyone would show kindness to something they don't understand. "I don't need to understand everything," he said. "Just enough to know you're not a threat." Nala looked away, a shadow crossing her face. "What if I am, and don't know it yet?" But Amadi only smiled and said, "Then we'll find out together." Their connection deepened in quiet gestures, her hand brushing his when she passed him the lantern, the way she leaned into him when the wind howled through the cracks in the walls. At night, she'd hum lullabies in a language he didn't recognize, and every time, his heart would ache without knowing why. It wasn't long before he asked her to stay, not as a guest, not as a mystery to be solved, but as his wife. She looked at him with such sorrow and tenderness that for a moment, he thought she'd say no. But then, with a soft nod, she whispered, "Yes." The village watched with cold eyes, but Amadi didn't care. He had found something rare, something fragile and glowing, like light beneath the waves. And for a time they were happy, their home filled with laughter, simple joys and long evenings by the fire. But Nala never touched the river. She never bathed in fresh water, and when the children of the village laughed and splashed in the shallow bay, Nala would turn away, tears pooling in her eyes, though she always denied them. Amadi wanted to ask, but he couldn't bring himself to break the spell. Not yet. The rhythm of the tides became the rhythm of their life together. Every morning, Amadi would rise before the sun, his fishing net slung across his shoulder, while Nala would stand by the window, her silhouette framed in soft dawn light. Listening, he often caught her with her eyes closed, as though hearing something far beyond the reach of his world. When he asked what it was, she would smile faintly and say, "The sea is never silent, Amadi. It speaks to those who remember how to listen." Her words stirred something in him, a mix of fascination and unease. The way she spoke about the ocean, it was not as a fisherman would, not as something to fear or respect, but as if she belonged to it. And yet, in all her gentleness, there was a quiet sadness that hung between them, like a fog that never lifted. Days melted into weeks. The village began to accept Nala in that cautious way small towns do when faced with beauty and mystery. Children brought her shells. Women asked her for charms against bad luck. Nala always smiled, polite but distant, as though her heart lived somewhere beyond reach. Still, Amadi loved her fiercely. She was peace after years of hardship, a light that had drifted into his life uninvited but welcome. At night, however, strange things began to happen. Sometimes, Amadi would wake to find the bed empty, the door slightly ajar, the sound of soft footsteps in the yard. When he followed, he would only find her standing barefoot in the moonlight, eyes fixed on the sea. Once, he asked, "Do you miss it?" She turned to him, startled. "What do you mean?" "The ocean," he said quietly. "You look at it as if it's calling you." Her lips trembled before she forced a smile. "Maybe it just reminds me of who I was before I met you." And with that, she kissed him, ending the question before it could grow teeth. Yet, doubts began to creep into his heart. When she cooked, she never used salt. When it rained, she refused to go outside. He once caught her flinching when a drop of river water splashed onto her hand. She laughed it off, claiming it was too cold, but the fear in her eyes lingered longer than her smile. There were moments of tenderness too deep for words. One evening, as the lanterns flickered and the waves whispered against the shore, she rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "If one day I disappear, promise me you'll still go to the sea." He frowned. "Why would you say that?" "Because," she said softly, "the sea never truly takes. It only trades." When he looked at her, she was crying silently, her tears glimmering like salt under firelight. He wiped them away, pretending not to notice how they tasted faintly of the ocean. That same night, she hummed a melody so haunting that Amadi dreamed of deep waters, of eyes beneath the waves watching him with sorrow and longing. When he woke, Nala was already awake, sitting by the window again. Her hand rested on the shell necklace around her throat, its surface catching the first light of morning. "It was my mother's," she said when she saw him looking. "It keeps me safe." Then she added in a whisper, "It keeps others safe from me." Amadi didn't know what she meant, but he felt it, an invisible boundary between them, fragile as mist. He reached for her hand, and she let him hold it, though her fingers were cold, damp, and trembling slightly. Outside, the sea roared against the rocks, wild and relentless. Inside, their silence grew heavier. Nala still smiled, still loved him in quiet ways, but Amadi could sense the distance in her eyes, the same way the horizon always looks close, but never truly is. And though he didn't know it yet, love had already set a price neither of them would be able to pay. The storm came without warning. One moment, the sky was calm and golden with the promise of dusk. The next, black clouds rolled in like beasts devouring the light. The sea howled and clawed at the shore, and Amadi fought the wind to bring his boat to safety. When he finally stumbled through the door, soaked and exhausted, the house was dark. Nala was nowhere to be seen. He called her name, but only the storm answered. The windows rattled. Thunder cracked open the night. He lit a lantern, its trembling glow pushing back the shadows, and noticed water on the floor. Not rainwater, but small, glistening drops that led toward the back of the house. The sound of splashing came faintly from the bathroom. His heart tightened. "Nala," he called, voice low, uncertain. No answer. He pushed the door open a little, and what he saw rooted him to the ground. She was kneeling in the bathtub, her back to him, shoulders trembling. Her skin shimmered beneath the flickering light, turning from bronze to blue, from human to something otherworldly. Her legs, they were no longer legs. Scales spread across her thighs like a living mosaic, merging, transforming. A long, gleaming tail arched beneath the water, glistening with the same light that danced on the sea at dawn. Amadi's breath caught. He wanted to speak, to run, to believe this was a trick of the light. But then the shell necklace she always wore began to pulse, glowing brighter with each beat, casting the room in a soft, unearthly glow. Nala turned her head slowly, her eyes filled not with fear, but sorrow. "You weren't supposed to see this," she whispered. Her voice was layered, echoing like it came from underwater. Amadi staggered back, gripping the doorframe. "What are you?" She looked down, tears mixing with the salt water. "Something I tried not to be." The storm outside seemed to listen. The thunder paused, replaced by the steady rhythm of rain. Amadi stepped closer, trembling. "How long?" he asked, barely managing to speak. "Since before you found me," she said softly. "The sea brought me to you. It wanted me to understand your kind, to learn love without belonging." She paused, the glow of the necklace dimming slightly. "But I broke the rule." "What rule?" Her lips quivered. "I was never meant to love you back." Amadi felt something break inside him. So all of this, our life, our marriage, it was a lie. Nala shook her head violently, her wet hair scattering droplets across the tiles. "No, everything I felt was real. That's why it's dangerous." Outside, lightning split the sky open. The wind howled through the cracks in the window, carrying with it the faint echo of distant voices, melodic, mournful, calling her name. "They're coming for me," she said, eyes wide now with fear. "The spirits of the deep. I was meant to return after the full moon, but I stayed. I couldn't leave you." Amadi knelt beside her, his hands shaking as he reached for her face. "Then don't go. We can leave. We can hide." Her expression softened, love and despair twining like tide and undertow. "You don't understand, Amadi. The sea doesn't lose what it owns. It will take me back, even if I fight." The necklace pulsed once more, brighter than before, and the light filled the room. Amadi felt the air thicken, the scent of salt and something ancient pressing in. For a moment, he thought he saw figures in the reflection of the water, shadows with eyes like pearls, waiting. Then, as suddenly as it began, the glow faded. Nala slumped forward, her tail already beginning to fade, skin returning to its human form. The storm outside began to quiet. Amadi caught her before she fell. Her heartbeat was faint but steady. She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Now you know," she murmured, her voice barely a breath. "And knowing will cost us both." He held her tightly, the lantern flickering above them, the air still heavy with salt. Outside, the tide rose higher, as if the ocean itself had heard her confession and was coming to claim what belonged to it. The next morning arrived cloaked in silence. No birds sang, no boats dared the sea. A strange stillness lingered over the village, thick and watchful, as if the world itself held its breath. Inside the house, Nala sat wrapped in a shawl, her body weakened, her eyes hollow. The glow from the shell necklace had dimmed, but it hadn't stopped pulsing entirely. It now throbbed like a quiet warning, alive against her skin. Amadi moved carefully around her, his hands uncertain, his words caught in his throat. He didn't know how to look at her. He didn't know what to call her now. Wife? Creature? Stranger? She finally broke the silence. "You don't have to be afraid of me, Amadi." "I'm not," he said quickly. Too quickly. She turned her gaze to the window. The tide was high, the waves too calm. "You saw me for what I am. You have every right to fear." He knelt beside her, placing his calloused hand over hers. "What I saw was the woman I love, caught in something too big for either of us to fight." Her lips trembled, and she looked down. "Then you need to know the rest." He waited as she took a shaky breath. "I wasn't born like this," she began. "I was chosen." "Chosen by who?" "Mami Wata," she whispered, the name falling from her lips like prayer and punishment. "The goddess of the deep. She chose me to walk among humans, to study them, to feel what they feel, but never to fall in love. That was the rule. That was the law." Amadi frowned. "Why would a goddess send someone like you to us?" "To remind the sea of its connection to the land," she said. "To learn empathy, emotion, sacrifice." She held up her necklace. This binds me to the ocean. It was supposed to be a lifeline, but now it's a leash. He reached for the necklace, instinctively wanting to tear it off, but she stopped him. No, if you remove it, the sea will come at once. It's the only thing holding them back. My disobedience has already been noticed. They are watching, waiting. Amadi stood, pacing the room. There has to be a way, a choice. We could run, go inland. The spirits don't go far from the sea, do they? Nala smiled sadly. They don't need to. I carry the sea with me. It's in my blood now, in my breath. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the truth in her sorrow. She wasn't only afraid of being taken, she was afraid of what she might become if she stayed. What happens if they come for you? He asked. What will they do? They won't hurt me. They'll take me home. She paused. But they'll erase everything. My memories, my love for you. They'll make me forget this life ever existed. Amadi's hands clenched. They can't do that. They have no right. They are gods, Amadi. Rights mean nothing to them. Only balance, only law. Outside, the wind began to shift. The air thickened, charged with a strange energy. Nala looked toward the sea. It's close now. The call. I can hear it all the time. Then don't answer, he said, stepping toward her. Stay. Fight it. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. You don't understand. To stay is to die slowly, painfully. My body will weaken. My spirit will rot. And worse, the sea might punish you for keeping me. I'll take that risk, he whispered. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers cool and trembling. But I won't. The wind knocked against the window then, a sudden gust that made the glass shiver. Somewhere deep within the waves, something ancient stirred. Nala closed her eyes and leaned into his touch one last time. Whatever happens next, know that I chose you, even when I wasn't allowed to, especially then. And for the first time since the storm, the necklace stopped pulsing, not because the danger was gone, but because it had already begun. The sky turned silver gray in the hours before dawn, the kind of pale, breathless light that comes just before something ends. The sea had pulled back unnaturally far, exposing jagged stones and broken shells on the shore. It felt like the ocean was preparing for something final. Inside the house, Nala stood in front of the mirror, brushing her hair in silence. Her reflection looked tired, almost translucent, as if she were fading by the minute. She wore the same shawl from the night before, and her necklace no longer glowed. It simply lay against her collarbone like a dormant curse. Amadi watched her from the doorway. You're going to leave, aren't you? She didn't turn around. It's no longer a choice. He stepped forward, his voice breaking. You said you loved me, that you chose me. I did, and I still do. Then stay. Fight them. She looked at him in the mirror, her eyes already glassy with tears. You don't understand. I can't win against what I am. I wasn't meant to love you. The moment I gave you my heart, I broke the bond that held me in balance. The sea is coming not just to take me, it's coming to restore what I've broken. Thunder rumbled in the distance, not in violence, but with a slow, inevitable weight, like a drumbeat drawing closer. Amadi crossed the room and took her hands in his. Let it come, then. We'll face it together. Her fingers curled into his, but she shook her head. If you stand beside me when they arrive, they might take you too. Or worse, they might leave you alive but empty, stripped of all memory of us. The sea doesn't just take bodies, Amadi. It takes truth. He trembled, his heart pounding. Then lie to them. Hide from them. We'll leave this place. Go somewhere far inland. You said they're bound to the coast. She interrupted him with a soft, broken laugh. Amadi, I am the sea. There's no place I could go where I wouldn't be found. The wind began to rise outside, howling through the narrow cracks in the house. Shadows danced along the floor as if the ocean itself had slipped inside. The flame in the lantern flickered violently. Nala's eyes widened. They're here, she whispered. I can feel them. Amadi took a step toward the door, reaching for the rusted blade he kept by the hearth. She caught his wrist. No, you can't fight them. He stared at her, his voice full of desperation. Then what do I do? Stand here and watch them take you? No, she said, pulling him close. Hold me, just once more. That's all I ask. He dropped the blade, his arms wrapped around her, tightly, fiercely, as if he could hold back the tide itself. Her head rested against his chest. For a moment there was no storm, no fate, no gods, just the sound of two hearts beating. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to love you." He kissed her forehead. "I'm not sorry." Not for a single second. Suddenly, the walls trembled. The front door creaked open with a long, aching groan, though no wind pushed it. Beyond the threshold, a mist had settled, thick, wet, glowing faintly with a strange blue hue. Shapes moved within it, tall and slow, as if the ocean itself had risen to walk. Nala pulled away from him, her fingers slipping from his grasp. "They won't wait much longer. I'll come after you," he said. "I'll find a way." Her eyes, filled with light and sorrow, met his. "Don't. That's how the sea claims more souls. It tempts the ones left behind." Then she stepped back. One step, two, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. When she crossed the threshold, the mist swallowed her whole. The door slammed shut, and silence returned. Amadi stood there for a long time, staring at the place where she had disappeared. His chest burned, not from rage or sorrow, but from the unbearable weight of love left unfinished. Outside, the sea rolled back toward the shore. The tide had returned, but she hadn't. The days that followed passed like dreams trapped in glass, clear, unmoving, and silent. The villagers noticed that Amadi no longer fished. His boat remained tethered, rocking gently with the tide, untouched. He no longer spoke to anyone unless spoken to first, and even then, his voice sounded like it came from far away, as though he were speaking through water. Each morning, he walked to the shoreline. He would stand for hours with his eyes on the horizon, waiting. The sea was no longer just water to him. It was her. Every wave, every gust of salt wind, every echo of the tide crashing against the rocks. He listened for her in all of it. At night, he returned to the house and sat by the window where she once stood, the shell necklace resting in his palm. He had found it the morning after she vanished, lying just inside the door, still damp, still faintly glowing. He couldn't bring himself to wear it, nor to lock it away. Instead, he held it like a prayer he didn't know how to say. Some nights he thought he heard her voice, a melody, soft and distant, threading through the wind. Other nights, he would wake with the taste of salt on his lips and swear she had touched him in his sleep. The villagers whispered again. They said she had bewitched him, that she had been a spirit all along, and he had been too foolish, too love-drunk to see it. But he didn't care what they thought. Let them gossip. Let them call her curse or ghost or myth. He knew what she was. She was his wife. He visited the old shrine near the rocks, where fishermen sometimes left offerings to Mami Wata. He brought seashells and woven nets, smoked fish and carved wood, placing them at the base of the statue with careful hands. He asked for nothing. He only said her name. One evening, months later, the tide rolled in higher than usual. The sea stretched out its hand, gentle but insistent, washing over his feet as he stood motionless in the surf. The water was warm, warmer than it should have been, and then he heard it. Not a voice, not a song, but a whisper. One word, carried by the wind. Amadi. He turned, eyes wide. No one was there, only the open water and the glint of moonlight on waves. But the whisper came again, soft and aching. Amadi. He dropped to his knees, overwhelmed, not with sorrow, but with something deeper, a knowing. She hadn't been erased, not completely. Somewhere, somehow, a part of her still remembered him. He held the necklace tightly to his chest and closed his eyes. "I hear you," he murmured. "I still hear you." The wind rose, playful this time, wrapping around him like a caress, and for a moment, just one, he felt her hand in his again, not cold, not trembling, warm. He opened his eyes. The sea had calmed. The sky was clear. From that night on, he kept going back. Every evening, every sunset, every whisper of the tide, not to search, not to grieve, but to listen, because he knew that she was there, in the current, in the mist, in the places between sleep and waking. Amadi never remarried, never left the village. He became part of the shoreline itself, a constant figure against the vast, endless blue. And sometimes, when the wind was just right, the fishermen swore they could hear him talking to the sea. Or maybe, just maybe, the sea was answering. Some loves are not meant to last in this world, but that doesn't mean they aren't real. Amati's love didn't end when Nala vanished into the sea. It simply changed form. It became part of the tide, the wind, the silence at dusk. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting go, and still choosing to remember. If you believe that true love leaves a mark that nothing can erase, tell us in the comments. Love never dies. And if this story moved you, don't stop here. The next story is already waiting for you on the screen. Click to dive into another tale where fate, mystery, and emotion collide.